Thank you, Mark. I'd like to thank everyone here today, and especially at the Center for Immigration Studies, for everything they do to illuminate a debate that far too often operates like illegal immigrants in the shadows. So in particular, let me thank Jessica Vaughn, who is seated back there. There's no one in America who knows more about immigration enforcement than Jessica Vaughn. And if she were to take like an island vacation for a year, I don't think we would have a single worthwhile investigative report done in the course of that year on what's really happening on our border. Then, of course, we have Steve Camarata, who knows more about immigration numbers, history, demography, the economy than anyone I've ever worked with. And one of the great pleasures of my professional life is just being able to get on the phone with Steve and just talk, just have a conversation and just explore what's in his thoughts, what he's studying, what he's researching. And for those of us who've had a chance to do the same, they'll understand that completely. And then, of course, Marguerite, who broadcasts all this information to the whole world, sitting right there. And without her, of course, nobody would even know about all the great work that Mark and Jessica and Steve are doing. What I wanted to talk about briefly today is how important words are in the immigration debate. And this relates very closely to why Neil is getting this award, because Neil, unlike so many of the people who cover immigration, provides the context and provides the language and provides the information that makes it possible to understand what it is that we're even talking about. Neil and me both have a lot in common. We share a great passion for the issue. And if anyone ever makes the mistake of inviting me or Neil to an expensive cocktail party, there's a really good chance we'll spend the evening talking about corporate influence and H-1Bs. And so we never get a second invitation. So I think we could all agree that as human beings, words are the essential ingredient for expressing thought. It's very hard to understand the world around you, to process events, to seek change, to communicate with friends, family, neighbors, politicians without words. And as you notice in the immigration debate, words have either changed or disappeared in a very purposeful and intentional way over a period of many years now. I mean, obviously one example we're all very familiar with, right, is how illegal alien, which is a very technical term with a precise legal meaning, became illegal immigrant, became undocumented immigrant, became immigrant without papers, became new American, which is what it is now. Another term that has once meant one thing and now means a completely different thing, of course, is the two magic words, immigration reform. How many of us have picked up an article and it went something like this? Today, President Obama unveiled a new immigration reform plan, but immigration reform opponents like Jeff Sessions said that they opposed the immigration reform measure, and other anti-reform hardliners like Steve King said they also oppose immigration reform. But polls broadly show Americans support immigration reform, and that support for immigration reform has been increasing. Right? And this is a huge part of my job, is I'll get on the phone with a reporter or send them an email and I'll say something like, first of all, when you say immigration reform, what do you mean? And you'd be amazed at how they have a hard time even answering that question. They say, immigration reform, just reforming the laws. Now, of course, the word reform has a positive connotation. When we say we want tax reform or we want energy reform, we mean to say we want to improve it. We want to improve our energy laws, improve our tax laws, whatever we may think that may be. But somehow the term immigration reform has been used to describe a set of policies that is inherently destructive, that serves the interests of a small few at the expense of the great many. And I mean, if immigration reform or comprehensive immigration reform were to be roughly defined today, I think we mostly agree that if you see those words, it basically means a massive, large-scale amnesty for illegal immigrants that includes access to government benefits and lifetime residency, combined with a very large permanent increase in future immigration and guest worker programs. Of course, that will never appear anywhere in the article. The other thing that gets left out of articles a lot, and this again is where Neil has been so exceptional, is numbers. Numbers provides context. One of the examples I always use is, imagine having a conversation about taxes where the ground rules are. You can't discuss what the tax rate currently is. You can't say what it used to be. You can't say what it's going to be. And you can't say whether you think it should be raised or lowered. You'd find yourself having a really hard time having a conversation about taxes. Yet, those are the ground rules for the immigration debate. That is the entry-level requirement by which all participants must abide. Now, the other thing, and then I'll close by reading some examples from some articles that illustrate these points, which I think will be fun. But the one other point I wanted to make, which is one of the trickiest and one of the ones that I think about and deal with a lot, is the question of legal versus illegal immigration and how that affects how we discuss and talk about these issues. Now, in America, because we've had so much illegal immigration, it's, I think, created the impression among many people that that's how most immigration occurs, is illegally. It also provides an easy escape hatch for politicians because you can avoid having to deal with the more difficult issues of how immigration affects the economy and how it affects societies and how it affects social cohesion. If you just say, oh, well, you know, I'm not saying I want to limit immigration, I'm just saying that, you know, we need to have more legal immigration so there's less illegal immigration. Of course, if that statement was taken at face value, then you would say, well, the solution to the border crisis is to hand everyone a green card when they arrive. Here you go. Here's a green card. No more illegal immigration. But politicians will say sometimes in the same breath that, well, I want to have a merit-based immigration system, and also the solution to illegal immigration is more legal immigration. Well, most illegal immigration, of course, is unskilled. So you can't have a merit-based system in which your operating premise is every intending illegal immigrant gets a green card. It doesn't make any sense, but no reporter would likely, except for Neil and some others who we know, would ever ask that as a follow-up question. And so you'll see perverse articles. One of the things we've seen a lot recently is articles that say, politician so-and-so, and notice how this word gets thrown in, even wants to limit legal immigration. And the word even, now that word even always gets in there. And I always have a few questions about this when I read that, because I say, well, first of all, what other kind of immigration would you seek to limit? The limit on illegal immigration is 0. Like, would it make sense for me to say, I propose a cap of 1 million a year on illegal immigration? By definition, it's 0. That's the only kind of immigration you limit is legal immigration. So anyway, these are just some examples. I could go on about this for a while, but I wanted to read some articles just to sort of illustrate some of the interesting points here. So I was talking earlier about how language changes the way we talk about illegal immigrants, and they've developed new terms. This is from the Associated Press, talking about illegal immigrant students, and it says, starting Thursday, University of California President Janet Napolitano will host a 2-day national conference on how colleges and universities can better serve their, quote, legally insecure students. So that's the new one. Now, earlier I was talking about the whole shadows issue. So this is so it says Iowa business leaders seek to influence immigration in 2016, and it says these business leaders hope to push candidates to address 3 topics: securing the border, visa and guest worker programs, and allowing 11.5 million immigrants currently living in the U.S. to come out of the shadows and get right with the law. And of course, by get right with the law, they mean waive all the penalties that exist under the law. I'd like to get that deal for myself. If I ever get pulled over for even a minor violation, and say, officer, I'd like to get right with the law. So what do you mean by that? Well, basically you waive all the fines and penalties, and maybe even throw in some special benefits. If there's any tax credits available, I'd like to know what those would be. Now, earlier I was talking about the use of the word immigration reform. This is an article in Politico, and you're going to think that I was exaggerating earlier about the use of the term immigration reform. And I'm truly reading from this article. It says, poll, GOP voters back immigration reform. Comprehensive immigration reform enjoys broad bipartisan support. 71% of likely voters surveyed said they back sweeping changes to immigration laws. The support spans party lines. 64% of Republican respondents back comprehensive immigration reform. Only 28% of those surveyed oppose comprehensive immigration reform. Now, at no point in the article does it actually say what comprehensive immigration reform is. But, right. Yeah, most Americans think that reform would mean improving the law as in maybe making the situation better for Americans. Now this one, I was optimistic when I read the headline. This is from the New York Times. It said, workers in Silicon Valley weigh in on Obama's immigration action. I thought, oh, this will be really good. We're going to interview some displaced American workers. And it says, and it explains, this is the sad news. President Obama's executive action on immigration falls short of what both immigrants and industry leaders were seeking. And then it proceeds to interview both of those groups. So this is another one, going forever here. This is one of my favorites. So there's a group called Partnership for a New American Economy, which one of the other golden rules is that if you have a really big business group pushing for massive increases in immigration, you must never say what the group's motivations are, or they might financially profit from anything they're pushing for, or mention even who's in the group. Even if like an issue like drilling, if Chevron was pushing a drilling bill, people would note like Chevron stands to make money from the bill. But so this is what this story says. It's a study saying that increased immigration will produce a rising tide of prosperity for everyone. And it says the study is by three groups: the Minnesota Business Immigration Coalition, America's Society Council of the Americas, I'm not sure what that is, and the Partnership for a New American Economy, which, this is great, it brings together more than 500 Republican, Democrat, and independent mayors and business leaders, and this is what the article says, who support sensible immigration reform. God bless them. Here's another one. So this shows how we manipulate polls of Republican voters. This is in the Washington Post. It says, Republican pollster Whit Ayer's research has shown that even GOP primary voters want action when informed the other option is de facto amnesty. So, well, there you go. I'm going to end on a serious note, because there are voices that are being shut out of the immigration debate, and so I'm going to read a letter that our office received before handing it back to Mark and the extraordinary Neil Monroe. This is an article that our office received from a displaced American IT worker. Again, in all seriousness, these are the people who actually are living in America's shadows, and this is what they said. I am an IT professional and worked for Southern California Edison for over 2 decades. I was a loyal employee and always received outstanding reviews. A foreign worker with an H-1B visa recently replaced me. My coworkers were the best of the best, and they were also replaced. Having my job taken from me has affected me greatly. I am the sole provider of my children. Due to a disability, finding employment at the same wage and with a work modification will be very difficult. When I was given notice of my termination date, I asked if they could assist a disabled person, and they said they could not. I may need to use my 401k and pension to supplement my income and take a job that will not facilitate my disability. Half my pension was lost in a divorce and is the only asset in the marriage. It is an ominous possibility that in 5 years or less I may have no assets, suffer from severe pain, and will need to go on full disability with a catastrophic decrease in income. If my job was not replaced, I could have worked full-time for 10 to 15 years. My layoff has made my children fearful for their future and the security of their home. My young son already knows 2 computer programming languages, but he now has firsthand knowledge of the H-1B visa abuse and may not choose to use his natural gift and work in the IT field. And the person concludes by saying, I paid my taxes, obey the laws, and have been a good citizen supporting the community with donations. The government needs to do their job and serve the American worker. I can't say it any better than that. So thank you for your time today, and I will hand it back over to Mark.